Yes, folks, welcome to Beyond the Pitch. Of course, I'm Phil, as always, joined with the fantastic Ian Joy, and absolutely delighted to be joined with the wonderful Danny Higginbotham for our first show with Danny here. First of many. So much to get through. First of all, boys, thanks for joining me today.
Welcome. It's an absolute pleasure. Been waiting to get going for a while, so it's good for the three of us to all get going this evening.
Thank you very much, Phil. Yeah, Danny, listen, thank you so much for joining us. We are absolutely privileged to have a man of your talents, especially on the analysis board, joining us. We know your terrific career is absolutely fantastic to see and to watch, so we're privileged. We're honoured to have you with us, and we're delighted that we can get you off and started with an unbelievable game that just took place right now with the Merseyside derby. We'll talk a Manchester lad talking about the Merseyside derby. What did you think of the game?
It was a fantastic result for Liverpool. I think as the game went on, I think Liverpool looked the stronger team. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think early on, I think Everton gave as good as they get. It was quite a scrappy game at times. You know, there was a lot of tackles flying in. There was a lot of talk. Should Bartley have been sent off? And I think he should have been. But then Liverpool just kept going to the end. You know, Sturridge, you can never knock him. You know, when he's asked upon, comes on the pitch and makes a real difference. So Jurgen Klopp would be absolutely delighted in the manner of the victory as well. There's no doubt about it.
Danny, I've heard that Ronald Koeman's quite harsh with his players, as you would expect from a Dutchman. Very direct. Has been very direct with some of them about their lack of ability. Wants to replace a number of them. Schneiderlin, Depay, both been heavy linked with Everton. When you look at Everton, what do you make of that relationship with Koeman? Does he have contempt for those players?
It's difficult to say because you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. But the one thing I would say, as a player, you have to deal with whatever's thrown your way. Whatever manager you work with, you have to deal with that. You know, you get paid good money. I know the way that things have changed now. It's all about man management skills. You know, you used to be able to give everybody a kick up the backside, so to speak. But things have changed now. You know, it's the man management skills, and you might have 20% that need an arm around a shoulder, 20% let them get on with it. And, you know, there could then be 60% that is just, you know, they can deal with certain things, but it's an individual players and how they deal with it. And I think the modern day footballer now more often than not, they need their arm around the shoulder. And at times then, you know, we do talk about players and say that they've got to deal with the circumstances. They've got to deal with how a player is. But if your upbringing has been different, then, you know, it can be difficult at times, and, you know, it's up to Koeman to get the best out of his players, because that was the reason that Martinez ended up leaving, because he didn't. Simple as that.
It really is a surprise when you look at Everton Football Club, the changes that they've gone through after David Moyes, just trying to get that consistency level, keep themselves at the top of the table, challenging possibly for a European place, and bringing in some excellent coaches. You know, I was surprised initially with Koeman, even though he did a terrific job in South. I thought that it was an interesting signing for Everton Football Club to bring a man like him, a different style, a completely different foreigner than what Everton Football Club are more familiar with having on the sidelines. We know Martinez did an excellent job, and he's probably one of the reasons why they did keep with the foreigner. But it's a difficult club, Everton. Right? Am I wrong in thinking that their standards should probably be higher than where they are on the table and what they're actually thinking mentally?
I think so, definitely. I think if you look at the players that they've got as well, that would suggest that it would be better as well. But I think if you look at Koeman, I think Everton's understanding bringing him in. I think if you look at the record last season, I think that Everton and Southampton scored the same amount of goals, so that wasn't going to be an issue. But Ronald Koeman's defensively much stronger, and I think that's what the powers that be at Everton wanted, because they conceded a lot of goals last season for a club that wants to go places. And I think that bringing Koeman in adds a little bit of steel defensively. He always had a very good defensive record at Southampton. And he's still adjusting, I believe. I think they are underachieving. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And when you look at the players within that squad, there should be so much more coming from them. And it's up to the manager to get the best out of the players. You know, he's played 4-2-3-1. He's played 4-3-3. But at the moment, you know, it's trying to get a blend that suits all of the players. And for me, your main player, obviously people talk about Lukaku, then it's Barkley. How do you get the best out of him? Right. Is it with playing as a number 10? Is it with him playing a little bit deeper so he's able to run with the ball forward into spaces? That's the key to it, because if you get Lukaku and Barkley firing, then there won't be a problem at all, which is shown not so much last season but the season before. Barkley created so many assists for Lukaku.
Danny, you wrote a piece on Friday for The Sun. I have an article on The Sun. I want to ask you about that because it was a really, really interesting piece that discussed the back four, there's two central defenders and the two holding midfielders, about being a tight box. You played it at Stoke. Tony Pulis did it. When this is in reference to the City game, of course, against Arsenal. When you said that City need to copy what Chelsea are doing with that tight that tight box. Arsenal score a goal inside 5 minutes. Walcott walks right through City's midfield, right through the central defender. You've got a full back at centre back, unchallenged. Bellerin runs 70 yards without a tackle. It almost seems prophetic that you wrote this, and then bang, it happens.
I think it's something that we're seeing occurring quite a lot in the summer. One of the first things I said in the column was that I expected to see two defensive midfielders getting more involved in football now. I think Tottenham, to a certain extent, can be forgiven for it, because what they've got two centre backs, usually in Vertonghen and Alderweireld, that play fullback for Belgium. So therefore, they're happy going into the wide areas. You speak to most centre backs; they don't want to go outside the width of the 18-yard box. That's where you get isolated. So what teams have done? Arsenal have done it quite a lot this season, but Chelsea, you're quite right to mention them, because the way that they do it, they do play obviously with a back three. It's a little bit different than most teams in the Premier League, but they allow one of the centre backs to go forward. We saw with Azpilicueta's goal. The opportunity and the goal that Costa scored came from an Azpilicueta cross. Yeah. But what they do at all times, they have your two centre backs, allow one to go, and they have your two defensive midfielders. So what that means is that in the Premier League, and I think in football in general, not just in England, in Europe, in world football, a lot of it is changing now from possession-based to now becoming counter-attacking. And what's asked now from the fullbacks? Fullbacks are asked to patrol the width, whether it be attacking or whether it be defending. So that's where teams will look to get at you. So what happens is your two centre-backs are sitting. If your two fullbacks go and you only have one defensive midfielder sitting, like Fernando at the weekend and like we saw against Leicester, he can't cover both the right back and the left back position. So what you see now, in particular with Chelsea, you look at Alonso and you look at Moses, very attack-minded, playing as wing backs. Chelsea near enough have a 3-2-5 when they're attacking. Two central midfielders. So what happens is, when the fullbacks or wing backs are out of position, their recovery run, two fullbacks, is into that defensive midfield position. So therefore, the defensive midfielders then become your right back or your left back. So at no time you ever isolated. And what we're seeing with Conte a lot is we defend with five and we attack with five. So therefore, they're not open to the counter-attack. And that's what's setting them apart at the moment. Arsenal did it well for quite a while. They had Mustafi, who's been a big miss, and Koscielny, and Xhaka and Coquelin. And what they do, the two fullbacks, they go flying forward. And the two defensive midfielders will take their position if there's a counter-attack. Whereas Manchester City is very different. We saw the Leicester City game as one that really stood out. Their highest possession of the season, Manchester City, which we know Leicester are happy to do that. They lead teams into a false sense of security and then look to exploit you where you're weak. And then they broke quickly but conceded the most goals they had during the season. And that's where I think the way forward with football now, doesn't matter how good your team is, I think we're going to start to see two defensive midfielders with two centre backs, because the full backs, the onus on them is getting forward is huge, and the involvement more so now ever of the counter attack.
Pep Guardiola is quite an interesting man when it comes to tactics and how he breaks things down, how he wants to go forward, how he wants to defend. It's almost to me that a lot of coaches now, especially foreign coaches who have been in a domestic league and a foreign domestic league, they focus more on playing the offensive brand of football. They don't necessarily care too much about defensively. If you concede 2, we'll score 3 or 4, Pep Guardiola, I watched a great training session with him at Bayern Munich, and he worked in not exactly the same box that you're just talking about on the training ground where you have the 2 and 2. He would always focus on trying to outnumber the opposition going forward. Yeah. Everything was focused on offensive. So if there was 2 defenders in that box, or there was a wide midfielder and a fullback, he would try to get 3 players, 3 opposition, 3 offensive players into that box that you outnumbered every time the defensive unit that was in there. And it was all over the field he worked on this little square. I mean, football's changing so much from what we learned back in the day to get it up the park and get it to your number 9 and hold it up and feed the midfield in. Then it got a little bit more technical, and we had speedy wingers, especially that United team that you came through. It was very, very fast team. And now what we're seeing now is it's pretty much every player on the field has to be technically gifted. They're younger players, they're more energetic, and the coaches themselves, and in my personal opinion, focus on offensive football a little too much. And probably when you consider all the champions that we've seen in the Premier League, especially over the last 20 years, you know, the defences have actually won them the championships in big games. Yeah. So maybe the foreigners just getting used to the Premier League and how it's actually won.
I think it's defenders in general. When we talk about teams as defensive units, you know, you go back over the years, you know, we look at the Premier League. You know, the centre-backs that we had, your Vidic's, your Steve Bruce, your Tony Adams, you know, your John Terry's, Yap Stam, you know, the list was endless. There's not many of them left now. You know, the majority of them now are all ball players. So therefore, I always believe partnerships is in terms of centre-backs, centre-forwards or central midfielders. You want them to be opposites. So if you have centre-backs, you want one ball winner and you want the other one that's going to sweep up anything behind. And the problem is we have now more centre-backs that want to sweep up more than anything. So therefore, you've not got that dominant centre-back, and that's a real problem, I think, not just in the Premier League, I think throughout football now. You know, they are a dying breed, unfortunately, because of the way that players are brought up now, youngsters. But talking about Guardiola, it's really interesting when you talk about how when they're going forward, when he was at Bayern Munich and Barcelona in particular, how he wanted to outnumber the opposition. Yeah. But watching his games, you know, fortunate enough to work on a few of the games when he was at Barcelona and also at Bayern Munich, he sees that as a very strong defensive structure as well, because we always talk about the 5-second press. You know, so if he's got so many men going forward, when they lose the ball, can they all then press the ball? The problem is then for the defenders is that you have two options. You either clear the ball blind, so therefore you don't know where you're clearing the ball, so you're not really going to counter-attack, or what you do is go back to the goalkeeper, and that stops the counter-attack. The problem that you're having now in England, I think, for Guardiola, and he says he's learning all the time, is the pace of the game. Defence turns to attack so quickly. You know, but in my opinion, he would probably look at La Liga and he'd look at the Bundesliga and say, okay, we have 4 or 5 games a season. He's come out after numerous games this season in the Premier League and said there are no easy games. You don't get any respite because each team brings something different, whether it be Burnley, who are a newly promoted team, whether it be Bournemouth. We've seen the results that have been real upsets, and I think that's something that Guardiola is just getting used to. I think there's a lot of things been said about Guardiola recently. You know, I think when there's such a good, sometimes you try and pick him apart. And I think a lot of things have been lost in translation. You know, he was asked a question, I think last week after the Leicester City game, you know, do you do tackling sessions? And his reply was, no, I don't do tackling. Everybody going, I can't believe you do tackling sessions. You can ask, I'm sure you would say the same. And you go and speak to any of your managers and said, what do you do tackling sessions? They don't go, what's a tackling session? You know, you do defence versus attack and things like that. But so I just think that people have taken that out of context. I think it's something that's been lost in translation. And for me, Guardiola, he's got players that some of them are very, very good, but it's an aging squad, and some of them probably can't do what he wants them to do. And it's going to take a couple of transfer windows until he adjusts to the Premier League and until the players he's got as well. But he's going to be thereabouts. You know, he's still, in my mind, one of the best coaches, managers in world football.
Yeah, smart man.
Brings us to Arsenal. Simple question. It's a two-part question to both of you, really. First of all, Ian, I'll ask it to you, mate. Can Arsenal win the league again under Arsene Wenger? And if you're Alexis Sanchez, and you're in the same situation that Robin van Persie found himself in, that Cesc Fabregas found himself in, that all of Arsenal's top players found themselves in, said, look, I can stay here, great football club. Danny has said that Wenger's probably brilliant with his players, which I'm sure he is. I'm sure that's a factor for him wanting to stay. But he can make more money elsewhere and also, let's be honest, have a more realistic opportunity of winning trophies. So, two-part question. You first, Ian. Can Arsenal win the league again under Wenger? And what would you do if you're Alexis Sanchez?
I mean, it's very difficult. First and foremost, can Arsenal win the Premier League? I mean, the Premier League, in my opinion, is very difficult now because they're so far behind the leaders, Chelsea. That's always going to be very difficult to catch up on. I think, was it 9 points now, something like that, 10 points? It's almost impossible. When you look at the Christmas period, you may get lucky, teams may drop points, but to lose 2 or 3 games on the bounce and automatically catch up before the end of the season is going to be very difficult to do. Going forward with Arsene Wenger, I don't see any reason why not. The Premier League doesn't necessarily have an out-and-out winner every single year. Yes, there's 2 or 3 teams who are playing great, attractive style of football and always going to be challenging for the title, but where have they been over the last 2 or 3 years? We've seen Chelsea struggle the last couple of years. We've seen United struggle the last couple of years. We've seen consistency issues with a lot of the big teams. So it just depends on who gets off to the best start, who finds that consistency level. Coming through this Christmas period will be very important for a lot of the teams in the top 4 if they want to challenge for the title, because they all have a chance right now. I mean, the Premier League is, in my opinion, the most competitive league right now in the world's game. So next season, if Arsenal make a couple of signings, or if Arsene Wenger is smart with some of the players and manages to keep a hold of this squad, there's no reason why they can't compete for the title. But are they lacking that little bit of class up front, that goal scorer, that Higuain, that presence with a Suarez, someone who's going to win you a game when necessarily the team is not playing a great game, which we've seen a lot of the champions do, including last year with Leicester. They always had that goal scorer to rely on to get them a goal here and there and win those points when you probably didn't deserve it. Arsene Wenger and his Arsenal side, as you've seen over the last couple of games, drop points when the team hasn't necessarily played well, or when they have played well and not come away with the wins. I like watching Arsenal. I think Arsene Wenger's got them playing some great football, but they're inconsistent. So until they sort out their consistency, I don't see them winning the title. But because the Premier League is so open, anyone can win it.
Danny, what about you, mate? What's your take on it?
I think it's going to be tough for him now. I think Chelsea, the way that they have gone about things has been unbelievable. You know, I think some of the results that Conte had early on in his tenure at Chelsea, I think were a blessing in disguise for him. I think it enabled him to go to a back 3 earlier than probably what he thought he was going to have to. But he was able to then implement his ideas very quickly. I think when we look at Arsenal, it's for Arsenal supporters, they'll be thinking to themselves now, it's the same thing happening again. All of a sudden you see the talk with Sanchez and you see the talk with Ozil. They've been there before. Arsenal's biggest problem in recent seasons has been not the fact of losing players, but it's who they've lost players to. So if Ozil doesn't stay at Arsenal and he goes back to Germany, goes back to Spain, that's all well and good. They've lost a fantastic player, but they've not gone to a competitor. Sanchez, if he goes, I think all the talk with China, I think that's his agent looking at things and going, you know what, we can use this to try and get a better deal with Arsenal. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The problem that Arsenal have had over recent seasons is that they've sold players to their major competitors in the domestic league. We talk about Van Persie going to Manchester United. That's why Manchester United won the Premier League that season. Yep. In turn, making Manchester United stronger, making Arsenal weaker. We've seen it. We can go back as far as Ashley Cole going to Chelsea. We look at Nasri going to Manchester City, Kolo Touré going to Manchester City. They've done it time and time again. So there has to be something there where you have to address a situation. In my mind, you have a top player, you don't let his contract go less than 2 years. It's as simple as that, because then you're creating big problems. So if Arsenal keep going on as they are doing, which is they lose their top players and then replacing them, you're never going to have that team then that you look at and think, right, we can win the Premier League. Now, Sanchez, for me, he's been absolutely magnificent. He's been transformed into a centre forward. He comes out of the team at the moment. Giroud goes in there. The problem you have then is they're 2 completely different players. Yeah. We talk about Ozil. You know, he wasn't at his best yesterday. He's got more goals this season in all competitions than in his best career at Arsenal. That's down to Sanchez. Sanchez drops deep. Players then get beyond him. We saw it yesterday with Walcott. We saw it last week against Stoke City. Ozil did it. Iwobi did it. You know, so they have a good way of playing. The only problem is, when it comes to these big games, which has been mentioned a lot of the times, are they mentally strong enough? They got beat by Liverpool first game of the season at home 4-3. They lost to Manchester City. They drew with Manchester United and they were fortunate to get anything from that game. They drew with Tottenham. Can they beat their competitors? They beat Chelsea and they beat them well, but that was the previous Chelsea. That was not the Chelsea that we're seeing now. So for me, you can win your so-called lesser games, but can you take points off the teams around you? And if you can't, that's when it becomes a problem. We're seeing Chelsea are doing that. They did it against Manchester United. They did it against Manchester City. So for me, they're the key games. It's like I say, it's all well and good taking points from the lesser clubs, but you need to do it against these bigger clubs that are around you and be challenging with you.
Danny, when you look at Arsenal, and you just mentioned it right there, keeping a hold of your star players, managing to sign the best players, is there a certain Arsenal Football Club of just being satisfied with a top four finish that attracts a lot of players because it's London, it's a fantastic historic club, players can make a decent amount of money there? But what's really lacking from them actually being a title contender year in, year out? Like, in your opinion, is it just because they're so satisfied with getting into a Champions League spot and winning a trophy here and there?
I think so, because Arsene Wenger, first and foremost, along with Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the great Premier League managers of all time. What he did, the players he's brought into that football club, the Invincibles, your Henrys, your Vieiras, the list goes on. Absolutely magnificent. But the one thing I would say, and I have said it before, is that if Chelsea, if Manchester United, if Manchester City, if Liverpool, if they had the run that Arsenal have had now without winning the Premier League, with only a few trophies in the last 13, 14 years, you can guarantee none of their managers would be at them football clubs.
No.
So, well, we've seen it with Manchester United, changing managers. Sir Alex Ferguson was so fortunate for so long. We've seen it with Chelsea. We've seen it with Manchester City without question. And we've also seen it with Liverpool. So therefore, these teams that we've just mentioned, they want to get managers in that are going to win the Premier League. You look at Arsenal, you look at Arsene Wenger, like I say, he's been a phenomenal manager. But I believe if he was at any other football club other than Arsenal, with the lack of silverware for the size of the football club, I don't think he'd probably be in a job now. And I don't think that's speaking out of turn, because the records speak for themselves when we compare it to the other fantastic clubs that I've said.
So does that tell you that maybe it's not necessarily about winning trophies anymore for clubs like Arsenal? They're happy with their financial building because now business. The wonderful Absolutely. Stadium, everything's working well financially. They've made a lot of money.
Well, everybody talks about the top four. The top four is what it's all about. And Arsenal have done that consecutively year after year after year. But they haven't won the Premier League for a long time. So I think that seems to be the holy grail. Get Champions League football. Get more revenue coming in. It's a massive football club. But if you look at the money that they've spent, okay, they have spent big money, but it's been here and there. You look at Ozil, you look at Sanchez. Very rarely would you ever see them, I think, probably go out and spend, I don't know, in one transfer window or two transfer windows, maybe go and spend £100 million. I don't think we're really going to see that. Arsene Wenger, he's very much a manager. The players that he's produced, you look at the money he got them for, and look what he turned them into. You go all the way back, you look at Henry, you look at Vieira, you look at Anelka. He's very much a manager that develops players. They all do improve under him, and for the powers that be, they probably look at it and go, well, that's fantastic.
Great business.
We buy them at this price, we make them fantastic players, they're loved at the club, and then we sell them on for a good profit. So it is each to their own, but unfortunately, football is more than a business than ever.
Yeah.
He just looks really uncomfortable buying to me. Even whenever he does have to spend, he drags it out that last minute in the window, and then he decides he's going to panic. I remember whenever United beat them 8-2, he went out after that match and bought 3 or 4 players. I think he bought Mertesacker, he bought Arteta, and it just looked like a bunch of panic signings. And again, he buys Peter Cech in the year that Leicester won the league. Whenever, if he'd have strengthened significantly that season, Arsenal was there for the taking. So, Danny, two more questions for you, go, mate. Want to ask you about Chelsea's situation, because they're flying. Does anybody figure them out and say, all right, well, we know what Conte's done here, we know how to nullify this? I remember listening to Andres Villas-Boas talking about that lineup and saying, if you have really good quality width, 3-5-2 is something that you can, it's quite easy to play against. But as we've seen in the Premier League as of right now, nobody's been able to figure them out.
I think one of the problems that you have is that, whenever you see a 3-5-2, a 3-4-3, you always look and you think to yourself, right, where we can get at them is the width. But the problem is because we've talked about it previously, you look at Chelsea and they're a 3-2-5 when they're attacking. So what that means is that the opposition, they have to defend in big numbers. So say, for example, someone gets a counter-attack against them. They still have 4 or 5 back. They get the ball into the wide areas. The wide areas are where you're always going to be vulnerable. But what counteracts that is the fact that you've got 3 centre-backs and you've also got 2 defensive midfielders that can also deal with crosses coming into the box. So if anything, Chelsea are more than happy to say, listen, we will deal with crosses that come into the box. But because they are so dominant, because they're so on top for large majorities of the game, unless they want to play the counter-attack themselves like they did against Manchester City, the centre-forward of the opposition ends up isolated and players are not able to get up. Your left wingers or left of a 3 when you're playing a 4-2-3-1 end up as fullbacks because Chelsea is so dominant. So therefore, it doesn't matter how much width you use because the centre-forward is going to be isolated. The wingers aren't going to be able to get forward quick enough to get crosses into the box, and Chelsea will not be done on the counter-attack. So, yes, we look at 3-5-2 or 3-2-5 when attacking, but that very much becomes a 5-2-3 when defending, and that's the difference about it. If they can't win the ball back initially, they'll all drop back into their positions, and the wing-backs aren't vulnerable then because everybody knows their job and everybody's close and compact. And we're seeing now, I think, less and less in football that there's not many natural wingers about. Your natural wingers are your fullbacks. Yeah. Now, to ask them to track the wing-backs and then actually get forward themselves is asking a big thing. So because Chelsea are the dominant team in most of the games that they play, it's impossible for teams to get at them in the areas where they're possibly weak.
Danny, I know for a fact me and Phil could sit here and talk football with you all night long, and to me it's fantastic to have the opportunity to work with you and to listen to you and to get inside your mind. I mean, we can learn so much, me and Phil both, about what's gone on through that Premier League brain of yours, because I know that you've experienced so many things that many people don't get the opportunity to do it. Did you ever play in a 3-5-2?
I did, and you know what? I actually enjoyed it. We had when we was at Derby County, we played the conventional 3-5-2, so we had the 2 wing-backs, you had your 3 midfielders, and we played with 2 centre-forwards. Now, the way we used to play, you have to give a lot of credit to teams that play 3 at the back now. Yeah. Because if someone said to you, most people would say, right, okay, 3 centre-backs against 1 centre-forward. People would say, well, that's easy, you've got 3v1. It was much easier when it was 3 centre-backs against 2 centre-forwards. Because what you find now, and we've seen with Azpilicueta, with David Luiz, with Cahill as well, at times you have to go looking for players. Because if you've got a 3v1 against 1 centre-forward from the opposition, that means you're getting outnumbered somewhere else. Mm-hmm. When I played in the 3 at the back, more often than not, the opposition would play 2 centre-forward. So what would happen, we would have a sweeper, and there would be me on the left-hand side and another player on the right-hand side, and we were free to go and hunt the centre-forwards, knowing that if a ball was played over the top of us and the centre-forwards were quicker than us, it really wasn't an issue because we had our sweeper that was looking after covering our backs. The thing that you have now, if you have 3 centre-backs, we've seen that the majority of the time your centre-forward isn't your highest player up the pitch. Sometimes it will be a number 10 or it'll be an attacking midfielder. So therefore, there has to be a lot of communication between the back 3 and the defensive midfielders. Because what you can end up doing, what you should never do is cross lines. A centre-half never go past the midfielder, and likewise, a midfielder you don't want going past the centre-half. So the communication has to be key because, like I've said, if there's only 1 centre-forward, that means there's going to be runners coming from elsewhere. So your communication, I think your intelligence levels now playing in a back 3 are very different. It used to be simple to play in a back 3. You had a man go and mark him, don't worry about anything in behind because your sweeper's got it. So that for me is different. Much different now, and I think it's a much more difficult role to play because of the simple fact there's 1 less centre forward in that area.
Just before you go, Danny, I want to ask you about Bob Bradley. What's the situation at Swansea? Because his defence looks a mess.
I've seen him a few.
I feel for him. I mean, I wanted to work for him, but I feel for him.
I've seen him a few times. You know what? When he first got the job, I think everybody was giving him a lot of stick before he even walked into the dugout, before he even walked through the door. Now, I'm not going to be a person that will ever do that. I like to think that I judge people on how I see them themselves, and that goes for everything in life, the way you see things. Now, what he's done, he's come in, and I've done a few of his games. I did the Stoke City game. I'm just trying to think the other ones. I have done a few. I've done a few others as well. And the problem is that he doesn't know his best lineup. He doesn't know his best system. And at times, I think it's something like conceded 18 in the last 6 away games. It's an average of 3 a game away. He doesn't set up first and foremost defensively. It's like you attack, we attack. You cannot do that in the Premier League. It's impossible. Yeah. I don't care who you are. At times when they were at Stoke City, they all went forward and they were left with 2 centre-backs, 2 inexperienced centre-backs, and they were so open to a counter-attack, and they were the away team. So the problem that you have, and Swansea had a similar problem last season, not as in terms of the amount of goals that they were conceding, but Swansea, as we all know, over recent years, they've developed, or they brought this style to the Premier League that's been very pleasing on the eye. Now, that's all well and good when you're 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. That's all well and good then. You win a relegation fight, you cannot play that way. You will not get out of it. The teams that get out of relegation fights are the ones that roll their sleeves up and say, right, we've got to go toe-to-toe. We've got to scrap. We've got to put our heads in where people won't put their feet. First of all, I'm not too sure Swansea have enough players like that. You know, they lost Ashley Williams, a magnificent player.
A man who, by the way, needs pointing out, almost took Robert Van Persie's life on a football pitch. Go ahead.
But he is, for me, is massively missed for Swansea. There's no doubt about it. Now, the problem that you now have is that you've got a manager that comes in that, listen, I don't buy into all this. He doesn't know the league. He doesn't know this. He doesn't know his best team. He doesn't know his best system. And he believes that his best team or his best system is one that scores goals. They've scored more goals than 7th place Southampton, but look where they are in the league. Defences will keep you up in the league. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I know it's a simple thing to say, but you keep a clean sheet, you've got a point. Yeah. You score 4 goals, as we've seen from Swansea, you don't necessarily win the game. So you build from the back and you will get opportunities, and that's what he needs to do. If he's given the time, he needs to stick with a starting 11, and needs to stick with a system, and he needs to make sure, first and foremost, they are defensively strong. Then as you make that strong, you then grow into it. That's the only way to do it. We did it when we first got promoted with Stoke City in the Premier League. That's what we knew we would get opportunities, but we had a ridiculous amount of clean sheets. We knew if we took the lead, more often than not, we would not lose the game. Whereas Swansea, you think, okay, they may take the lead, but they're probably still capable of conceding 4 or 5 goals. So he needs to correct that. He needs to rectify it as soon as possible. Or otherwise, they're going to be in for a long, long winter and an even longer spring.
Danny, I could sit and listen to you all night, mate, and we could talk all night. And that's what me and Phil do. We enjoy it. We love the game, and there's so much to talk about nowadays because the top 5 European leagues are just incredible to watch. The Premier League right now, as I just mentioned there, it's one of the most competitive leagues and competitive Premier Leagues I've ever seen before. So there's so much to talk about, and we're honoured to have you a part of the team. We look forward to working you going forward, mate.
Yeah, no problem at all. Just one last thing I would say is that, you know, we talk about the players in the Premier League. The difference this season is going to be the managers. There's no doubt about it. I have some of the best managers in the world in the Premier League. Everybody talks about Mourinho not being the manager that he once was. He's coming good now, but that's not the case. The problem that you now have within the Premier League for managers like Mourinho is that Mourinho set the standards a long time ago. He was the tactical genius. Now what you've got your Klopps, you've got your Guardiolas, you've got your Pochettinos, you've got your Contes. They're all singing off the same hymn sheet as Mourinho. So therefore, that is what is narrowing the gap now.
No, I'm not letting you go, Danny. I'm not letting you go now. Now you've mentioned a bunch of names there, and all of them are foreigners. When are we going to start to change the mentality that we'll see an English coach? And I know you're very well educated yourself, and you know a lot of your former colleagues who have played the professional game, and even some of the coaches that you've played for as Englishmen are very, very talented, not necessarily getting their chance, or are they just not good enough?
I don't think it's that they're not good enough. At times, I think it's not seen as attractive enough. You know, we look at Birmingham City. Okay, we're going into the Championship now. But look at Birmingham City. In my opinion, Gary Rowett, one of the best up and coming English managers, without doubt, going places and will go places, and probably will get to the Premier League before Birmingham City do. And that's no dig at Birmingham City. It's just how highly I rate Gary Rowett. All of a sudden, new owners come in. They don't look at the manager. They look at the name. Gianfranco Zola, he twisted me in knots more times than I care to. 1 way, 2 ways, 3 ways. He was an unbelievable player, a fantastic gentleman as well. I've had the privilege of speaking to him already in his new management job. But you can't tell me that the reason he got that job realistically is because he is Gianfranco Zola. Because Gary Rowett was doing an extraordinary job. Yeah. So what we're finding now is that as owners come in to football clubs, they want that you hate to say it, but they want that X factor. They want that manager that's whether it's been a former player that's been a magnificent player. It doesn't always work though. We've seen that. You know, Mourinho, he's had to work his way up. Wasn't a phenomenal player. Sir Alex Ferguson, not a phenomenal player. Arsene Wenger, exactly the same. So there is this idealistic that British managers will come through and be successful. But the problem is, because we've got so many foreign owners in this country now, they see football very differently than we do. And I think that a lot of them want this name. Now, don't get me wrong. Liverpool, Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea, different. They are going to get the best of the best. But as we go lower down, Premier League clubs, Championship clubs, top Championship clubs, we're not always given the opportunity, or top British managers, English managers aren't always given the opportunity, because the owners of these football clubs, whether it be right or whether it be wrong, they want this star name to come in. Yeah. And we've seen at Wolves, Walter Zenga, he was a great player. Didn't work for him at Wolves. I hope it works for Gianfranco Zola, because I've got a lot of time for him. I think he's an absolute gentleman. Whether it will or not is another story. Yeah. But that's the problem that we do seem to find, is that instead of looking at a manager for what he is, I think some owners are still looking, instead of going, what's his managerial pedigree? They're looking at, what did he win when he was a player? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what you won as a player. It's a completely different circumstances. Like I say, as we've seen, some of your top managers in the world now, okay, Guardiola, Enrique, granted. But you look in the Premier League, some of the managers were not top players. But look at the success that they've had, because they were given an opportunity. It's as simple as that.
I agree with you.
See your 27-year-old in Germany, Ian, getting a job at Hoffenheim. Can you imagine that in England? You know, personally, I want to see more Alan Pardew dances, guys like that there. Danny, mate, as Ian said, we could do this forever. Absolutely superb, brilliant stuff as always. Love listening to you on Sky. Brilliant to have you part of the team here, mate, and look forward to catching up with you again next week with more pearls of wisdom. Cheers, Dan.
Cheers, Danny.
See you, mate.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye. Superb
stuff from Danny Higg, who will be joining us on a weekly basis. Ian. Yeah. The connections a wee bit ropey. We'll get that improved as we play with this platform and get used to dealing with the people. But nonetheless, you'll be able to catch the vast majority of what Danny was saying. Some very interesting stuff for Ian.
Listen, I think that what we've seen from Sky Sports in the UK, now BT Sport also doing the same, is that they're looking not necessarily at the name, which is what I love about it. And we're just talking about star managers right there, bringing the big name in to attract everyone to go to games or to try and get that immediate success. What these networks are starting to do is to pick the best brains, and Danny clearly is one of them. I've managed to have an opportunity myself to follow, obviously, his career, but also to follow what he's done since his career. I mean, you can only be impressed with what he says and how he goes about his business in front of the analysis board. Also, when he's put under a bit of pressure, surrounded by some world-class names, he stands out to me, and that's not easy to do. You know, I found it difficult myself working for BT Sports or Fox. When I'm working alongside you, it's very difficult because you're a lot prettier. But yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because you've got to be something different. You've got to shine. Seriously. You've got to be able to do the best performance you possibly can, and you've got to try and stand out if you want to stay in the business and be one of the best. And the way Danny's done his business is really been exciting to watch, and he's shown me he's got this great brain. What I do worry is that when you go on and you impress on television like he is doing, and showing great analysis, showing a great football mind, you know, it's only a matter of time before a great job gets offered to him along the line as well, you know.
You know, I've asked him about that. Does he want to manage? And he says he's absolutely no interest in it. But people change, you know, who knows? But I just think, going back to what we were saying there, Ian, just to finish up on Danny, regardless of what job you're doing, you have to try to stand out. You have to make yourself unique. What is it about me that's different to everybody else? You can be a pundit and repeat what everybody else says and just be an echo chamber, or you can get into this with fresh, unique, researched ideas. And if you have the fortune of tying it together with a career, you you know, don't speak down to your audience. I think Danny does a brilliant job of explaining things within football the people have questions about, and especially over here, Americans, the way they consume sports, they love tactical breakdowns. We see this in their own sports, from football. So
100%.
Be brilliant.
So listen, before you go on to that, it's only a matter of time before Danny gets an opportunity even in the United States. Because, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, TV's TV. Sky Sports is fantastic and it's wonderful. But in the United States, what we're doing now with football in this country is blowing everyone away. You can watch every single game live. You are only maybe months, possibly a year away from seeing someone like Danny standing in front of a tactical board and having hundreds of thousands of people tune in to watch what he's got to say. Because people in this country are so obsessed with the game now, Phil. They love it. Not just the Brits who are here or the Europeans or the Latinos. We're talking Americans who know their game now. They know how to talk a good game, and they want to hear from the best in the business as well. Break things down. Show how this is done, what it's done, which way to do it. And an analysis board is the best way to do that. So we're not far away from having that show, that's for sure. Listen,
when I want to reach for somebody, and I had my dream partners, who do I want? Danny fell in that category because of how unique he was. But what you just said there is a really important point, because when I first came to the US, all you really needed to talk about football on TV was an accent, and everybody believed what you said. That's not good enough anymore. Americans know the sport; they know it inside out, and then the young and up and coming ones are getting there. So I think it's really, really important that when you put somebody on to talk about football, they're educating, they're informing, and they're entertaining, and Danny does a fantastic job of that. And look, it's not enough anymore just to be able to have an accent and bluff your way. So brilliant to have him on board. Very exciting, and you'll be seeing more of that. Ian, a couple of things, mate. Some of the things we'll get to Germany, we'll get to the other leagues in a minute. The one thing I didn't get to with Danny was, of course, the Mourinho revolution, and it's been 3 games, but United's rejuvenation feels real. Under Van Gaal, I was never convinced. I always felt like it feels like form to me, rather than anything authentic, because United have been so close to putting these runs together for so long. And when you and I spoke a week or two ago, I said it wouldn't shock me to see United go on like a 12, 13, 14 game unbeaten run, which it wouldn't, because it's all there. Ibrahimovic's been outstanding. A very, very good result for them against West Brom away from home, against a team that have been playing very, very well. But would you agree that it looks real to you?
Yeah, it does. And, credit for you to actually say that, to go on record and say it as well, because it's never easy to back a club like Manchester United that's been in such turmoil since Fergie left. And to put money on it is certainly not an easy thing to do. You just wouldn't do it. But with Mourinho there, we mentioned it months ago that you have to give him time to be able to work his magic. It was always going to take time to be able to gel some of these star names into the squad, to be able to get some of the squad players playing at the level that he wants them to play, to find out exactly how he wants United to play. And you were right. United were not far away. What does concern me is that they're still winning games or drawing games by a low scoreline. I want to see this United team score 3 and 4 on the board, week in and week out. That's when I'm really going to take this United team seriously. But as long as they're winning 1-0 or winning by the goal, you don't mind watching United grow under Mourinho. It's been a lot better to watch, certainly more entertaining. And I think with Mourinho on the sidelines, you've got a manager that you can believe in will put everything in to turn the club around in general and get success back in Manchester United's trophy board. So I think that it's always going to be a difficult job for anyone coming in. You got to give him time. We gave him time. He's not been a lot of time, but he's already starting to turn heads, which is great to watch.
And that's the thing, is we talk about giving managers time. And in the end, in the era that we live in today, it's absolute madness. People are criticising Guardiola, for example. Look, I know everybody wants to have a dig at him, right? He's been this ultra-successful manager. He's done everything, won everything. He's coached the best players in the world, and everybody's desperate to show you're not all that, right? Give the guy some time, okay?
Right.
It takes time. to communicate their ideas. This was always going to be the most difficult build of any team that he had, given what he had at Barcelona and Bayern Munich. Give Mourinho time. Give Conte time. Because Conte's going to have a bad patch. And you know and I know that today, the last 90 minutes defines everything. If Mourinho's United go out and win 3-0, he's a genius. He's brilliant. United are back on track. Everything looks great. They go out and lose 1 or 2-0. He's a dud. He's dodgy. You know, you can't trust him. You know, he's not good enough. He's washed up. I mean, it's ridiculous how little time managers are getting today to get things right.
It goes back to what Danny was just talking about in his speech right there about coaches. Basically, you're looking for that star factor. You're looking for that result immediately. Nobody's willing to wait. Nobody's willing to invest millions into a big name or into a coach without having success quickly. You know, there's not much time. This is a business operating now. It's not necessarily just about putting trophies on there. It's about making money for your football club. So, you know, it's a totally different game from what we were used to 20 years ago. But with Mourinho in particular, you have to look and admire what he does and how he handles the media. The pressure got to Louis van Gaal. The pressure got to David Moyes. And it was always going to be the case after Sir Alex, because United is such a big club. Everyone was expecting there to be that stopgap coach in between the successor. And the media got to those two coaches, David Moyes in particular. They went after him from the get-go and immediately slammed him for his results, and he paid the price. Van Gaal, never in a million years did I think Van Gaal would lose his temper at the media the way he did do when he was at United. And his results were poor, of course, the performances were poor, but the media and social media, the general public in particular, go after and don't make it easy for any coach or any player in today's game. Mourinho doesn't necessarily pay attention to that. He does his business. He controls the press conference, which is what I admire so much about him. He has complete control about who's in there. Listen to me. I'm the man. If you've got something to say, I'll have a bite back at you, but I do it in a professional manner. And sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not. He actually goes at people, but he always has control. Not many coaches in today's game have control. Mourinho, to me, I get the feeling like he has that club in his hands. Oh, yeah. And I have felt like that since Sir Alex had control of the club. I have not felt like the man in charge was in complete control, and Mourinho feels like that. All
right, Ian, January transfer window. It's not far away. It's a week or so away, a week and a half away.
Where are you going? You transferring out yet?
Yes, free transfer. I've been a free transfer for the last 30 years and no one's picked me up. But supposedly one of the players that's available is Dimitri Payet. Now, if you look at Dimitri Payet, magnificent football player, unquestionable. But attitude, not so sure. If you look at his attitude this season, it's been dreadful. Clearly wanted to leave in the summer after a fantastic Euros. Hasn't been sold. If you're a football club, are you put off by his attitude? And if he was on the market right now for 30 million, would you pay 30 million for Payet?
30 million, yes, because he's talented. He's a French national team player. He's a star player. 30 million's nothing in today's market.
He's turning 30, right?
I get it. Yeah. And it's a different man's game now. I get it. It's a younger man's game, but the fact is you know that you're buying a talent and you know he can switch it on. I have watched this guy all the way back to Lille in the French league and watched him go through Marseille all the way over to the Premier League. And I've known his talent. I've seen his talent. I've watched him grow. I've watched him get better. This last year, I never seen that Dimitri Payet. I knew he was talented, but I didn't realise he was as good as what he showed us last year at West Ham and also at the Euros. 9 goals last year he scored all season. It's not necessarily a terrific goal-scoring record, but he scored some important goals for a club like West Ham. It's not a bad turnaround. So he's a talented player. They got him on the cheap. I think it was like maybe 10 or 12 million, something like that, in pounds. So that's a steal for me. 30 million, yes, it's definitely pushing it, but at today's market, people are willing to spend 30 million to bring him in for a couple of years, Phil, to try and get that success and take a gamble on him. So why not?
He's been linked with Arsenal. Is he the right player for them?
I do like that move. I think that he's their style of player. You know, obviously the French connection helps him. with Wenger and some of the French boys that they have at that club. That certainly helps. His style certainly helps Arsenal go forward. Dangerous on free kicks, dangerous getting forward, invites players in, creates a lot of opportunities.
Yep.
A very, very exciting player to watch. He's the one for me that when I watch West Ham, he's the one who I'm expecting to have a big game if they're going to win it. So I see him making a move to a club like Arsenal because it just seems like a perfect fit. Where else would he fit in the Premier League? That's the question. Would he go to a Chelsea and get in a team? Probably not. Would he go to United's team and get in a team? Maybe, but probably not. He's that type of player that it would have to be a perfect fit for him to be successful, but also for the club to be successful. Arsenal right now, the way they spend their money, the business that they do, they need some star players. They need to find that consistency. He certainly is not a week in and week out kind of guy, but he's a man who can turn up and basically do well for a club like Arsenal and take them to another level. I agree with that.
All right, last question on the transfer window. Before we'll do a proper show on it, but I want you to be brutally honest with me here, okay? This is Yaya Toure, I want to say it, is getting in the City squad right now. He turned down a move to China, unbelievable money, so he deserves credit. But Carlos Tevez is going to be the highest paid football player in the history of the game, making 600 grand a week going to China. Oscar, about to turn 25. Danny Taylor does another magnificent piece on this. You are essentially selling your football career to go to China, and bear in mind, Oscar could go to almost any top club in Europe and make shed loads of cash, but he's going to China to double his wages to play in potato fields in a league that's not ready. I mean, let's just be honest. If you looked at what the clubs had to put up with going over there on pre-seasons, you had one pitch to get right for one day. When you're advertising all around the world and you can't get it right. I mean, so you're going over into China, right? And you're selling your football career to play in this league, but mind you, you're getting paid enormous prices. Would you have done that in the prime of your career if you were playing at the very highest level, making, a couple of $100 grand a week? Would you have said, you know what, I'm going to forgo all the success and I'm going to go to China?
No, and I don't think that the world's elite are doing that. I think that what's happening is you're finding players who are 28 and onwards, maybe being that type of age where
Oscar's
28 used. Yeah, I get it. I can understand it. But if you look at 28 years old and onwards,
Big Bird's worth, if Oscar's worth that.
You're going to a league where you're going to make a fortune of money and you're already thinking about what comes after your career and why not pick up as much money as you possibly can. Now, Oscar's already achieved quite a lot in his career at such a young age. Obviously a national team player, came from probably a rougher area in Brazil and never necessarily had a lot of money. So the background of these players is quite important as to why they're making these types of decisions. When someone's offering you ridiculous amounts of money for them, I mean, we're talking double, sometimes triple the salary that they're currently on. $1 million. We're getting close to $1 million a week, man, when you're looking at some of these moves. We're getting close to $1 million a week. How would it be for anyone in this world, never mind footballers, if someone was to offer you that type of money, you would pretty much give up everything to go make it for a year, for 2 years, whatever it may be. Yeah, but you say you wouldn't, but until it's in front of you and put on the table, it's very difficult to know exactly how you would feel about it. I don't believe that anyone wants to go and play in China. I really don't believe that. They only go for the money. The league is clearly not ready. There's a lot of good coaches out there, and they're making waves with their promotion stuff, and they're doing pretty well with some of the signings that they're doing. It's, in my opinion, a big move for them domestically to try and improve on their youth development and nurture some of their younger players to be in a very strong national team again. And I think that's a very smart move to make. They have endless amounts of money, clearly, for everyone to witness. But nobody in their right mind wants to go to play football in China when they're in their prime of their career. I don't think anyone who's making a fortune of money in the Premier League or in the Bundesliga and happy with that and happy where they're living would consider that move.
Well, unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people consider it.
Yep.
All right. Lastly, Bundesliga. It has shut down now for winter break, right?
Not yet. Tuesday, Wednesdays, big games coming up.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember, Phil. The last show we did, we talked about the Bundesliga, and I said to you, Leipzig would lose their undefeated record against Ingolstadt. At that time, it was top versus bottom. They lost against Ingolstadt.
You did say that. That's right.
Yeah, they lost, and then someone who was listening to our show actually pointed out as well, which is good because everyone's listening and paying attention. And now what we're seeing in the Bundesliga is two teams on 36. Bayern Munich are sitting top on goal difference over Leipzig, both on 36 points. Behind them is Hoffenheim on 27 points, which is a big gap. But on Wednesday, Bayern plays against Leipzig as the last game before the winter break. So it'll be a big game, big decider. Leipzig are a team that are so exciting to watch right now. It's great to see.
So Bayern Leipzig, did you say Bayern Leipzig on Wednesday?
Wednesday, yep.
Right before the winter break. Predictions, Mr. Joy?
Yeah, very difficult again to predict this, but because Bayern are at home in this match, it's always going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be a Bayern win. By how much? I put some money on that they'll win by at least 3 goals in this game, and they will stamp their authority on the Bundesliga once again. They let it slip a couple of times against Dortmund and blah, blah, blah. But this time around, they're top of the table. They're equal on points with Leipzig. They've got a big point to prove to the Bundesliga, to the media, to even their own presidents and executive board who've been criticizing this team and Ancelotti. This is a massive game for the intern of this football club. So I think a point is proven. Lewandowski gets a couple of goals. Thomas Muller gets a couple of goals, and they win by 3 or 4.
Do they knock Arsenal out of the Champions League?
Oh, man.
Comfortable.
What a draw.
What do you mean? Wow, man. Ian,
what a draw.
It's the easiest prediction that you will have in the Champions League. But I'm going to tell you what.
What do you think? What do you think about that draw? Tell me about it. I mean, tell me about that tie first and foremost.
Well, we've seen it time and time again. It'll play out exactly like it's been played out before. Bayern Munich will win it in the first leg. And then when there's no pressure on Arsenal, the second leg, you have a chance to get in the performance. Look, this is Arsenal, okay? Like you said, they're brilliant to watch. Arsenal are a fun team to watch. But the reason for Arsenal's failures are the same every year. And you put Arsenal in a position where you expect them to win, where there's pressure on them to win. That's when you have a problem. Not expect, because they do beat middle of the road teams, but you put them in a position where there's pressure to win, where you're up against a big team. I would never back Arsenal in a big game. I think they're so mentally vulnerable, and I think they bought poorly again. Lucas Vázquez up front. I think that Lucas, the kid, maybe it's not Vázquez, it's Lucas.
Lucas,
the kid they bought from Deportivo. Where's he? Right. And they spent big money on him, Ian. You know, Granit Xhaka, decent player, good player, a bit of a head case, but that's okay. I don't mind that in the midfielder. I just feel like Elneny, I couldn't tell you anything about the guy because he very rarely impresses me. You know, I think Wenger once again has bought poorly. So for me, I think they're not relevant at the highest level. Once Arsenal come up against a good team in the Champions League, they get knocked out, and Bayern Munich will be far, far, far too strong for Arsenal.
First and foremost, you mentioned Lucas. He was the one that scored a hat-trick against Basel. Is that the same Lucas you're talking about, Lucas Perez?
Is that the kid? Yeah.
Yeah.
27.
So he scored a hat-trick in the Champions League already. All right, I'll cut it.
Yeah.
Listen, I think that it depends on which Arsenal shows up. If Arsenal, the exciting Arsenal that can play, that are exciting to watch,
that team
are dangerous to score goals against, I think that it might be that Arsenal that shows up in one of the ties, but over the 2 legs, Bayern Munich are too strong. And Bayern, we talked about this before, they have never hit top form yet. They've been close to it. This weekend again, they were poor. They won 1-0 against Darmstadt. A fantastic goal by Douglas Costa. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's 30-yard bomb in the top corner. And that's what it took to beat Darmstadt, who are at the bottom of the table. But they're not far away. Once they do hit top form, which I hope they do on Wednesday because I've got money on it, they will be a force to be reckoned with for the whole of the Champions League.
They've got all the big game players in that situation. You know,
it's a mentality, right? When you get to the big games, the big game players turn up.
They buy world-class quality. You look at the players Arsenal sent. Lucas was not going to Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich had no interest in him. Granit Xhaka, If Bayern Munich had wanted Granit Xhaka, they'd have got him in the Bundesliga. You know, I just think there's so, you know, you compare both the teams, and look, Bayern Munich pay the money that Arsenal won't pay. Arsenal will not pay the money to break into the highest pay bracket. And what Danny said, you know, they get this reputation for being this shrewd business. But how on earth have you let Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez, I'm sure, I think I'm correct in saying Mesut Ozil's in the same situation. If I'm not, I apologize. But at least Alexis Sanchez is 18 months to go on his contract, which leaves you nowhere to go. Right? Before you really start negotiating properly. That's madness to me. Why didn't that get done last summer? So now you're in a situation where your best player, your most sought after player, has you by the short and curlies. He has a situation in where he could conceivably, Arsenal could turn around and say, if he says no right now, you can sell him in January, or wait to the summer and already accept a knockdown price. They let the same situation happen to Van Persie, right? Now, Van Persie was 29, so different, you know. But how have you let Alexis Sanchez get into this situation at this stage in his career without negotiating with him, without getting a deal done, or at least knowing that you can't get a deal done, so that you can prepare his sale, so that you could have said, last summer, he needs to go. We'll never come to agreement on terms. And you're in control at that point. You have 2 years to go on his deal. Once you get down beneath 2 years, control goes to the player. Arsenal put themselves in a
but like you said, they've been there
situation
before, and they've always managed to come out of that.
But they don't, though. They lose the player.
They sign the next person, and then they sign the next person. Then they sign the next person. Okay, business-wise, you lose out on that transfer fee, but you still have that player scoring goals and playing well for you until he leaves.
If his head's
I think it would be terrible business for them if they did lose him, and it would be very difficult to replace him. But let's not forget that Arsenal is one of the most successful run football clubs in the whole of the Premier League, and pretty much quite close to being the whole of Europe. They don't have success on the field, but they have the success behind the field, and behind closed doors are making a fortune of money. Making this go down to 18 months doesn't bother me. The fact that they don't want to break this this rule of how much they pay their players is quite bizarre. And if they want to challenge for titles and they want to win silver, well, they've got to eventually do that, because the transfer fees, the salaries of these players are through the roof right now, and you have to be able to and willing to pay your players the market rate. Otherwise, you will fall behind. Champions League places right now for Arsenal is achievable because they're good enough. But once they start dropping out of the Champions League, they're going to be forced to make that move, whether they like it or not. Go back to the Champions League, Phil. I want to know who your favourite is. I'm looking at the list right now, some of the fixtures. It's very difficult to pick a winner in this competition.
To me, at the start of this competition, there's 3, maybe 4 teams that can win it. That's it. I think with the teams in Europe right now, you've got Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. Those to me are realistically the only 3 teams that can win it. With an outsider somewhere, maybe Juventus, but they lost Pogba. So for me, I still can't look outside of those 3. I don't see a challenge coming from England. I don't see a challenge coming from PSG. I don't see a challenge coming from Italy. So for me, it's one of those 3.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Look at PSG struggling domestically. I mean, look, Monaco, okay, they're doing well domestically and could spring a surprise to win it. No chance. Atletico Madrid obviously can always spring a surprise in this competition. Especially they seem to focus on their performances in the Champions League and always manage to come out with some good results. So they'll be difficult. They have a difficult game against Leverkusen, but I don't see it being tough enough for them to not come through. Dortmund struggling domestically, Benfica. I mean, all the teams in there who really could compete with those top 3 that you just mentioned. I just don't see any of them. And the English teams in particular are the ones that I always look at and criticise the most, because it is such a fantastic domestic league, the Premier League, but to not have a couple of those teams really challenge for the trophy year in and year out is really disappointing for English football, I think, because the ultimate prize is not to win domestically. Of course you want to, but it is to focus on the Champions League. Bayern do it terrifically well because domestically they clean up year in and year out. They've always made sure that they focus on that. But when it comes to Champions League, Phil, they always raise their game to another level in the knockout stages. And it's the same for the two big Spanish clubs. I mean, they go for it.
Yeah, I think there are some fundamental differences. I think in Germany, obviously the winter break helps. The fact I don't care
I agree. I agree with that.
I don't buy into okay, it's a shorter league. Therefore, in terms of teams, I really don't think one or two extra fixtures make that much of a difference. But I think a winter break does make a lot of a difference, especially when you're in a European Cup year or a European Championship year, or a World Cup or a European Championship year, because you're talking about football players that have had no rest. I love to see football too, but these guys are human beings, and you've got injuries and everything else. So I think it does matter. I think it also matters, Ian, that in the Spanish league and German league, it is easier to rotate your squad without consequences. So in the English league, there is a lot more competitive balance between top to bottom. You can, all right, the top 3 or 4 teams aren't as strong as what you're going to see in La Liga, but I do think Real Madrid can rotate their squad against Eibar. They can rotate their squad against the weaker half of the Spanish league and still be fine. English teams find that very, very difficult to do. So there are some advantages. But then English football has a massive advantage financially, and so there's really no excuse for not having larger squads. So
you know, with your rotation thing, Phil, when you look at the star players, your Ronaldo, your Messi, your Lewandowski, you would say those are the star players for those 3 clubs, right?
Sure.
They play week in, week out.
Yeah, that's fair.
No matter where they're playing,
true.
their club's
That's
playing.
true.
They're playing week in and week out. So the star players are playing week in and week out.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the rest of the squad, the engine room, so to say, that is so vital to get you through a competition like the knockout stages of the Champions League, is where it really matters to me. And you always want your star players to turn up, which they do unbelievably well. But I find it unbelievable that these players can play 70 to 90 games a season and still maintain that level. Those 3 can do it. I fail to see many other players outside of those 3 be able to do it at that high of a level throughout multiple competitions, then go to your national team and do the same thing. It's just impossible to do. And we're going to obviously fail at the latter stages of these players' careers because they're going to, typical Wayne Rooney, look at him, started off incredibly well, played 70 to 90 games a season for United, and then all of a sudden, once he gets to 30s, knackered. These players are on another level, but can they keep that up for a long period of time? Their own domestic clubs are hoping, so I'm not so sure it's so easy to do.
I think when you do that to players, Ian, you make them vulnerable to temptation to juice and stuff like that, because no, I'm serious. I think when you're asking an athlete to do things that are inhuman, you raise the temptation to athletes to do things that isn't natural with their body, and thankfully I believe the vast majority don't do that, but I think that you increase the probability that can happen. Anyway,
do you think that is?
Yeah, I do. I think when you're asking human beings to do things that are inhuman, and when you've got things like sponsors that, when fans want Adidas kick in a few million of this guy or whatever, Under Armour or whatever. Then when you get in situations where sponsors are influencing team selection because they want their player on the pitch, you have a serious problem. And so I think when you're asking players to be football players, to be baseball players, where you're going to play almost every other game, you're going to and you can't rest. That's not human for a footballer.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've never seen it, and I don't think I've ever heard of a star player juicing at the elite level like some of those top 3 names that we just mentioned there. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo would be your ultimate idol because the expectancy on him to be this figure of winning, of pressure, of being able to score goals, of having this amazing look about himself, having this tan. I mean, the pressure is on him probably more than Messi or even on Lewandowski because he's such an icon in the way he looks and the way he plays. So he would be the one you would say, oh man, this guy's got so much pressure to stay at this level. But I don't think players can get away with it at this level. I really don't. I know that baseball players and football players have been found guilty of it in the NFL and American sports in particular. But in soccer and in the professional football game, I just don't see where they can escape from juicing, from taking something that's going to give them an advantage without being caught or without there being a consequence in injury as well, because you can only push yourself so far.
Yeah, it's what I'm saying. I think the vast majority don't do it. I just think you raise the temptation for them to do it. So, and we've seen players like the Stam. We saw the Dutch team get caught up in this. You know, I never thought that Lance Armstrong was doing it, but he was doing it. So we'll see, mate.
You never know, do you? I guess. All right. Fantastic. Again, wonderful show, Phil, as always. It's been great. Thank you again to Danny for everything you've done for us. We're looking forward to having you going forward and your expertise. Phil, look forward to the weekend. Next week, we'll be back with another show. We'll talk a little bit more domestic football ahead of the winter break in these foreign countries, but also talk about this busy Premier League schedule that's coming up. As always, people, we'll talk to you soon.
Ciao, mate. See you later. Bye.
Bye.